It's time for us to talk about nuclear power plants in Africa. It's good news when you do not have enough energy access or even efficiency, and then you're seeing power plants spring up to ensure that you have electricity access in your continent and probably in your country, because some of this nuclear power project is spread across Africa. But some are beginning to ask, should we question Russia's interest in Africa? Should we begin to question the way their projects are springing up in parts of Africa? No doubt it will benefit Africa, but what does Africa have to lose? Does Africa have anything to lose? These are the questions on the front burners today. Doc.
Well, I think there's a whole lot of skepticism, especially from the West, seeing again Russia beginning to take new interest in Africa.
So what is in it for Russia
yes,
to
and I
say?
think, yes, of course, because assessing and looking at Russia, whose trade with Africa is not up to 10% of the entire trade that Africa can do with the globe. It's put at about 1.34 billion dollars that Russia is doing currently with Africa in terms of trade, and now promising about $200 billion investment in energy alone in about 15 African states is something really that the countries of the West had to be quite really worried about, because if you remember the antecedent from the early days of the Soviet Union, where the ideological war was really strong between the West and the East, this idea of multilateralism, which of course Russia always would champion, was to go to some certain places with some perks here and there, and then of course you find that they had huge influence on the continent of Africa, especially in the area of education, where you find that the advocacy for the leftist school became very strong in Africa. And that sentiment has really not left the African shore. That makes us to be very, very suspicious of the West. But today, the West also is now beginning to be telling Africa, you have to be very careful and be sure that whatever that is being handed over to you in the form of aid is something that you have to watch out for, that it is not a kind of an opportunity for Russia under Putin to begin to exploit the resources that's in Africa, taking advantage especially of the anti-Western stance of some African states, and also seeing how democracy, which of course is hard won in Africa, is going to be undermined by this kind of support, because we're seeing the kind of interaction and the common reality between Russia and the military regime in some West African states as we speak. And these are issues that Africa really had to be worried about. That while we are in desperate need to see power conditions improve in Africa, we must also be wary of seeing that we are not getting into more crisis. We have light now, and then we have to come back with the bullet and its lightings.
Yes, I understand that there are worries, but it seems to be more about politics for the West warning Africa rather than having the interest of Africa at our heart, because we know that Africa has been the bride that has many suitors, and as you have a situation really in a real life situation where you have suitors and you have the bride, so when one suitor is saying to the bride, hey, be careful of this suitor, it doesn't have your best interest at heart, it doesn't necessarily mean that that other suitor who's warning it has the best interest at heart, just as if there's a struggle for who takes over. We can't rule out the fact that part of the reason why Russia or any other country from the West have come to invest in Africa is for their own good. One of them is for influence, another is for economic gains. But on the other hand, Africa also needs what these people are bringing on, like the power plant. It will help in the area of electricity. But I also have worry about the disadvantage or some of the consequence of this to the environment, and how, if it gets to the wrong hand or used for the wrong purpose, could also mean bad for Africa, and the fact that it can be weaponized, or there could be some negative environmental consequences of this? What are your thoughts?
Okay, first of all, I like the disposition of Russia towards Africa. You see, a country that always think of itself or self-good and has a strategic plan in place will always be at the fore among the competing nation in the global political arena. And Russia has really showed itself. Some pundits or political pundits and commentators would say that Russia actually influenced the rebellion against the democratically elected government in Burkina Faso, in Chad, and in Mali. Some political commentators will say that, and you cannot completely, it's debatable, but you cannot completely extricate Russia from that involvement. They may be innocent, but it may not be. As we are talking now, Russia is speaking to Guinea-Bissau, is speaking to Burkina Faso. In fact, it has started conversations since some of these countries since 2016, and they've started a roadmap for nuclear power project in some of these countries. In fact, in Burkina Faso, in 2025, you should be able to round up some of the projects that Russia started with them. The Russian company, Rosatom, they started with Nigeria since 2017. The Geregu nuclear power plant in Nigeria is with the Russia organization, that Rosatom, to operate in terms of the build, operate, and transfer procedure to the Nigerian government. So the Russians, that Russian company, set it up. $10 billion for that purpose. Russia is financing a part of that money. And as we speak now, if the Geregu power plant, nuclear power plant, is in operation, that means Russia have a big stake in it, and I tell you, they are still operating it. It has its downside. It has its advantages. And let's look at the advantages. You've mentioned a few. Power, but it goes beyond that. It produces the clean energy, renewable energy, that just only produces little or insignificant amount of carbon emission. So it is pure clean energy. It's used in the medical sector, in research and development, in agriculture, has been, debates that people don't normally hold. If you remember vividly, there was a time where Nigeria was talking about nuclear power, nuclear projects, and Nigerians and even scholars were afraid that, I'm sorry, you can't cite that here because the cost for the maintenance is on the high side and we do not have that financial capacity. And it was true. But as we speak now, we cannot continue to base our facts on the fact that, we do not have the capacity to do that and we hold back, and all the benefit that comes with having a nuclear power plant would just go that way. As we speak, South Africa has a nuclear power plant since a long time before 2017 Nigeria started theirs. Egypt equally has its own, and the Russians are equally behind both South Africa and Egypt. So one of the downsides that I want to talk about is the recycling or the storage of used fuel. That used fuel, it has to be stored in a certain area far away from the cities or places where people live, because it has the capacity to produce radioactive activities, and these are detrimental to the health of persons. So within the plant where we have these nuclear power plants, you also have storage for these facilities, for the used fuel. Now, there is a law that we must not recycle used fuel, because that is called plutonium-239. And that plutonium-239, as if you recycle it, it means you want to produce a nuclear weapon, which is for destruction purposes. And because they do not want that, the United Nations or the International Atomic Energy Agency made a law to that purpose that we must not recycle it. And that is the fear that is in the heart of everyone. But does that mean Africa is going to hold back and we are not going to move forward or make progress when we talk about industrialization? That's the big question that is staring us in the face.
But
Okay, before Pri brought to that, I said earlier that I had worries regarding the use of this power plant and if you could get to the road.
It's not
We do know that in Africa there is less monitoring of certain things that happen. When some countries began to test their nuclear weapons, Iran and the others, it took quite some time before the US knew that this was going on and they put their searchlights on them, even though they went ahead to start building and testing. Now, could there be some other ulterior motive regarding this building of nuclear weapons for the siting of many power plants in Africa?
If you look at what the considerations are, and for me, there's really huge source for worry. Because if you look at the challenges for peace building in Africa, and you see most of the arms and ammunition that come into Africa comes in from Russia, from Paris, and the rest of the Western country. And of course, what is also meant is that we are creating a new tension for Africa. And that's why real African leaders need to watch some of the things that they are doing. You see, it's not just about somebody giving you the beautiful picture of what it is. And especially when you don't even have the competence to even know what some certain people are doing. That we are not also yielding our soil, because there's also some negotiation that are going on the ground for the establishment of military bases all across, which is actually the real worry, creating a multipolar world where you have bases here and there, and then of course you are able to use those countries as your launch pad. So for me, leaders in Africa must open their eyes. When we're trying to solve our problem, there are a whole lot of endowment that God has given to us. We have lived this clean energy debate kind of argument. I feel that there's so much we can tap with what God has given to us, whether it's the water God has blessed us in abundance, whether it's the sunshine that He has given to us, whether it's the wind that God has given to us, or even the deposit that is on the ground, which nature has given to us. Let's even tap on that to build our energy sufficiency before getting into areas that are dangerous, that can be masked somehow. And of course, you find that Africa become another tension ground for geopolitics. So this for me is where I say we have to be suspect as Africans and be sure that when we are extending hands or we are seeking businesses, we ensure that of course we are not compromising the safety and the security of the people of Africa.
It's very important because one can just, be overwhelmed by the fact that you have some industrialization coming into Africa and not begin to interrogate or engage these supposed industrialization or development. What is the core reason? Nobody takes their money to a place without being aware or being sure of some benefits to them. So if Russia is bringing plants, is bringing nuclear plants and doing some projects here in Nigeria, in Egypt, in Ethiopia, and so many other African countries, not just Russia, China, and so many other countries, it is for Africans to ask these projects, and beyond what they're telling us, beyond what they're saying, find out exactly what is the need for them. Because it's not as if they do not have anywhere else to invest or to site these projects. Yes, there are economic gains to it, but what is behind it? What could come from it? Now, in areas where you have solid minerals in Africa, check those regions. A lot of times, there's restiveness in those regions. So because there's restiveness, it makes it easy for foreigners to exploit these minerals without necessarily being accountable for it, without necessarily paying the right price for it, because the people are fighting with themselves. Now, if they could go to war with less developed weapons of war, imagine what they would do when they have advanced weapons of war. I said earlier that there's less scrutiny with what happens here in Africa. So certain things happen in a clandestine way that it's hard for you to tell exactly what is going on. So I think it's time for us to begin to ask questions and stop acting like we're babies who somebody just buys a gift for, without even looking at what is this gift really. Is this really a gift to me, or is something that can be harmful? We're rejoicing, oh, these are our new friends, these are our new partners. What stops us from doing what is needed to develop and harness the minerals that we have to industrialize our country? Fine, Russia is bringing this, but there's a lot that can go wrong with nuclear power plants. There's a lot that can go wrong with perceptions, because there are times people could use you and use you to front for certain things. You're not the one doing it, but you're the one at the front, and so you are perceived as the enemy. Meanwhile, the real enemy is behind. So we should be careful not to be taken into wars, into certain things that we do not necessarily know and want to be involved in.
Thank you very much. I don't think we should be scared.
Should we not?
We shouldn't be scared, because if we are afraid,
maybe
we are not going to get a lot of things done. First of all, what the Nigerian government needs to do is that we make sure we get all our professionals and all our scholars, as long as nuclear power projects and atomic energy is concerned, to be involved in this. Doc, I'm coming. So because the reason we should do that.
How many?
We should do that.
The reason of involvement of this professionals.
The reason why I'm saying that. The reason why I'm saying that is this. The reason why I'm saying that is this. We also must think about the advantageous side of it. Imagine recently the government talked about making sure that we have a farming period where we harvest for like 3 times in the year, so that we have all harvest in the farming period for 3 times, or 3 times cycle in the year. Forget it. We cannot achieve this without the involvement of nuclear power.
Are you sure?
Yes, because nuclear power, just a moment, nuclear power has the potential to make sure that you have plants, harvest, storage facilities for throughout the year. Nuclear power has that. In the medical science, yes it does. In medical science, nuclear power has the capacity to sustain and build infrastructures and to preserve it. The nuclear power. So I think we should be looking at the advantageous side of it, because if we are scared, we want to do this, and this is going to happen. Let our professionals, let our military, let our professionals, our scientists, both in the military, in the Nigerian tertiary institutions, Ahmadu Bello University, one of these reactors, just a moment, one of these reactors was even stationed in Ahmadu Bello University in the northern part of the country, and it worked very, very fine. We can say we are not completely independent in manning and managing this process, but we cannot completely.
One source of energy.
It is.
There are so many other sources of energy.
No country uses one source of energy. China does not use one source of energy.
There are a lot of countries that are not even using nuclear energy and still energy sufficient. But what the point I'm making is simple. Is we don't need to have nuclear energy before we can give energy. What God has given to us as a country, even windmill alone, can give Nigeria all the energy it needs. That's not in doubt. But what you're looking at is the fact that you're talking about involving professionals. How many of these professionals do we see involved? And that is what Blessing talks about. A kind of simplicity it is for people to get away with so many things in Africa, that we sign agreements without looking at what we are signing. And these are the challenges that Africa faces. Most African nations are facing. Because you are in a dire need, you have to be very careful. And I know that even the pioneers and the sponsor of the non-aligned movement, then Nigeria was a particular strength in terms of driving non-alignment. And there was wisdom in the non-aligned movement. And that wisdom was to ensure that we are not going to have ourselves become a war theater for the power that be. So that is what you should be looking at. So you can't say because you are hungry today and then you sell your tomorrow. African leaders have to be very careful. The kind of covenants, agreements, treaties that they endorse, so that at the end of the day, the cities are safe. Citizens are not endangered. So So we don't create undue tensions for ourselves. Let's even begin to make use of what we have and see how we can leverage what we have to get to where we want to get to. That's my point. We can do agriculture, do storage with our thermal energy. And if we increase and ramp up what we currently do, we have a lot of water places that have not been done. One of these are put together. Even the one we are talking about, generating 7,000, we are not even able to take the 7,000. So we should be thinking about what's the implication, especially when you know that an international relation is just really an extension of your domestic politics and power.
Okay, I'll wrap up by saying that if we're talking about the advantages, yes, there are advantages, but I think that it's wisdom to know the type of technology, to know the type of industrialization, to know the type of deals that you accept. Any technology that has the ability to be used or can be used in a negative way and the effect to be so devastating that you as the receiving country does not have yet, does not fully understand yet. If someone else is bringing it to you, then your eyes should be wide open to follow through what their real intentions are and what they intend fully to do with that technology that is being sold or being given to you, so that you are not receiving more than you bargained for. So I would not want to use the word fear, but I would say we should be cautious. Africa should be cautious so that we are not saying, oh, there are benefits. The thing is, these so-called benefits, I use the word so-called because it seemed like the benefits, we are overestimating them. These benefits, are there substitutes for it? Do we have what can give us these same benefits without necessarily endangering ourselves or exposing ourselves to some dangers that we're not prepared for? Now, I think it's time for us to begin to look at those things very well. Because if we say, oh, we will have time to catch up or to learn the technology, they will teach us how many industries do we have here, set up by foreign bodies, set up by foreign countries, that we are really caught up with the full-scale operations of those things. We still rely on them for it. And that's why we found that the need for export rates is even going higher, because there are certain technologies that we do not yet have, and there are certain things that we cannot handle. All I will say is this: it is good to welcome investors, but as they come, as they cite industries, as they come up with certain business proposals, it should not be a thing of, oh yes, they are coming because we are the bride. You could be a bride.
Forward.
You could be a bride.
Be at the back.
We're not at the back. It didn't take Naseni to use power plants for them to come up with an irrigation system that will ensure the 3-year farming season, the 3 farming season in a year. It didn't take them that. So we can do much more without this. That is not to say that we do not want a nuclear power plant, but what we're saying is that for every project that comes to Africa, it should be that we know clearly what's going to happen and we are well equipped to follow through with the process so that we are not shortchanged at the end of the day. We're not used as pawns at the end of the day. Nobody should be using us at this point. You should be wise enough to detect and to know what happens here.
African leaders, shine your eyes.
Yes,
we need nuclear power.
Yes, we need nuclear power, but it should be something that we are totally in control of. At this point, we are not totally in control of it, and so that's the fear or that's the worry that I have with this.